Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our lovely viewers and listeners to the Actuate podcast, where we build in public. This time we have an exciting topic where we will be going through basically uh, what we did well and what we're learning. And then, of course, for those listening right now, uh, next week on April 8th through the 11th is Space Symposium where Andrew and I will be out and about in Colorado Springs. This is going to be one of our first major space events that we'll be attending, hosted by Space Foundation, which we are excited to announce many things about. So let's roll. Andrew, hit us with the first topic.
Cool. What I was thinking that we could do. So this is new when it comes to the structure that we're testing out. And also, hello again after a couple of weeks of not posting. I was thinking we can go through in the order that we have our commentary on the reflection. So we're in the what went well category. And Carolina has a first up topic.
Go for it, Carolina.
Yes, so I was able to get a solid list of the people that I can hit up. Is that correct?
Yes.
I can reach out to. So I have a list.
What's the context for this?
Okay, thank you about that. For that, so basically, we're doing outreach for XI. We're trying to get our clients on the door, and we're trying different strategies for us to be able to bring our ideal client. So we're focusing on outreach right now for all of our potential clients, and we are like testing different stuff. And one of the strategies is like what I was trying last week. It was cold outreach, just messaging people on LinkedIn to see if they were interested in having like a conversation to basically find out what they're looking for and what would be ideal if they were to work with an agency like ours or with a studio like ours. What they're looking for, what would be ideal for them, and their price point and all of that stuff. So I was able to get a good list, get it to a good place, because I think in the past I've struggled a lot with finding the appropriate people, but I think this time, out of nowhere, I had this light bulb go off, and I was able to put the list together. And I think it helped me a lot to jump on the call the day before and kind of have like the new strategy that C is going to be helping me with as well for the outreach, because all the people that I will reach out to, they will connect with me. Not all of them, but some of them will connect with me, but I wouldn't get responses from the messages. So it's kind of frustrating trying to reach out to people and just not getting responses. So now we're going to try to tailor the messaging to each one of them, and we're going to see how that goes. And then so we're going through each one of the topics, or do you want me everyone to go through what went well?
No, I think that was great and good question. For context, though, and this will make a lot more sense at the end as well, would you mind sharing a little bit about what your roles and responsibilities are here and what you're focusing on?
Yeah. So basically, I am assuming now the CEO position for XI. So XI is going to be my baby, and we're going to be taking it off the ground. We're going to be running with it, and we are really excited about bringing our first clients on the door to get it like to the spot that we want it to. And also, I know XI is going to be helping as well with all the venture companies that we develop on our own, but that's going to be like a different part of the businesses that XI will be handling as well. So,
and what is XI?
XI, it's our, thank you, it's our strategy, design, and execution studio. And basically, we are looking to work with companies that are doing anything out there, but it's for the advancement of humanity. So we're just not going to work with any company. There has to be some kind of mission along the company, whatever, tech you're developing or something that you're doing that is helping actually humankind. We're just not going for tech for the sake of tech. So
very cool. Thank you. And then next up, we have Nicole with a couple of comments about what went well.
So I'm so happy to say that we came up with a structure for this podcast. So that's why within this team meeting, we're going through it as like a retro style. And this will be the last time, well, not the last time, for a little bit when we're all together, since now we're going to focus on Actuate having one weekly space and call for this podcast, and XI having separate, since we're both building out two different things right now. But then for the quarterly, we'll all be together and we'll kind of do that in like a panel style. So that'll be fun. Sorry, something just went weird with Riverside, but it seems to be working again now.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you saw that too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then also we got the XI outreach locked in, which is going to go into also the rest of the things that I've been exploring within myself this week on how things are going with that. But I got my first scheduled outreach
Nice.
call, and that's been exciting because I'm like, you're messaging all these people and you're like, no one's answering, but then when they do answer, you're like, sweet.
Awesome.
So it's nice to know that people are nice enough to give their time and energy to talk to us. So that's exciting.
Congrats on that. Z has a commentary of something that went well.
Yeah, I was noticing just in general, it's been nice to be able to find potential portfolio companies. I saw this interesting tweet by, I think it was Alex Iskold from 2048 Ventures. He's talking about how having warm deal flow when it comes to pre-seed and seed is not just good, it's like table stakes. I'm like almost fully quoting, but it's like almost that. And it's interesting to note that having been on the other side of the table, how much easier it becomes to find companies, to kind of know where to look and who to look for, and kind of know what's a red flag and what's not. So that's been going pretty well. I was also really glad to be able to kind of figure out something to be able to largely help out with, because I've been observing to some degree with XI. But when Carolina brought up the outreach issue, kind of realized, okay, here's how to get people's attention via cold email. So I already started taking a look at the list, and just right away I was looking at profiles. I'm like, okay, that's a point, and just address them from. It's coming along well.
Very nice.
Oh, we're back with some technical difficulty. After some technical difficulties. Cool. So coming back where we left off, someone remind me because I wasn't paying attention.
I was diving into my stack of commentary on what I think went well. So I'm going to rattle it off and fly through it. And because in traditional Andrew fashion, I wrote a lot. So first thing is getting the podcast up and running again. We do have clarity and structure, very much what we're all kind of excited about here. So the new format should be interesting. Things will be a little bit more focused as well. We'll have Actuate Ventures and the venture side of things, and the venture building side of things as a dedicated focus, and we'll have the XI side of things as a dedicated focus when it comes to building in public. It'll all still be on this podcast. There'll just be different episodes, so keep on the lookout for that. The other thing that's pretty cool is I hear a trickle, by the way. Not sure who's typing. We are officially fundraising, and we are fundraising with a fund that we could say that out loud publicly. So if anybody is interested in investing in a deep tech and aerospace fund focused on pre-seed and seed companies, hit us up. But the big thing there is it felt like it was taking a while, but everything happens in its right time. We have progress and traction on artifacts for Actuate Ventures, which is very cool. We whipped up a 2-pager about everything that we're doing, and that's been very well received and has elicited even more conversations, which is really cool. And we finally pushed over the speed bump that we were on with the formal deck, the pitch deck for our studio and fund, and it's about 90% done. So it's being reviewed for feedback, and it's got a couple more minor tweaks, but in a really good place. So super stoked for that. As Chris mentioned, we're prepping for Space Symposium next week. We've heard a couple people say amazing things about it. We're very excited to see our partners at Space Foundation. They're the ones that are facilitating the event. And like Chris mentioned, it is one of our first major aerospace events. One of our first major aerospace events. So we're very excited to get properly, dive properly into the deep end of the industry. So looking forward to seeing everyone out there. Like I mentioned, the documentation has a lot of traction. It's led to more conversations, more people are coming into the Future Council. And we also have more clarity and structure and progress on XI, our product studio, product strategy, design, and execution studio. Carolina is at the helm of that. She was mentioning that earlier, so it's very exciting to see. You'll hear lots more on that on their dedicated updates. And then I will pass the mic off to Chris for what's worked well and what he's excited about.
Yeah, we continue to refine our approach, and I think with the way our team structured is, especially since we're essentially running like 2.5 companies at once, things are fragmented, and we're still building a lot of the processes, and it's new. For a background, I did have my own startup experience, so doing operational things wasn't the challenge, but getting all of the ducks aligned and having this amorphous legal entity set up that is the holding company and the management company and the fund and the sister company, all of these things. And then trying to figure out, okay, who belongs where and how are the processes. I guess it's more problems we face, but we're overcoming it just by making sure that we show up and we're figuring it out. And for those who are building their own companies, you really don't have to get it right day one. A lot of these startup stack type companies are like, here's every piece of software, here's a checklist. And it's like, screw the checklist. Because I've seen the checklist, and I've never really seen anyone follow the checklist successfully. So oftentimes the checklists you find online, if you're trying to be rigid about them, they end up hindering you. So from my perspective, I take all of the checklists and create your own, right? Legal is taking longer than we initially expected. Nothing wrong with them. It's just the fact that it's a much more complicated situation. We're creating a 503C is not just like some C corp with like straight down, and it's like, okay, you want to do your fundraising and you want to do all these other things. Yeah, it's going to take time, and then even getting our NDAs and things written up properly for us and going back and forth with legal. Right, this is not your fly by night Wild West startup that most of the viewers and listeners are going to be more accustomed to. And then even figuring out, it's like, okay, do we use Slack? Well, okay, Teams is giving us a year free. And then it's like, does it really matter? Because we're not years in deep, we're only months in deep with a chat system. What are we actually losing if we were to migrate? So these things, don't be so beholden to these things. Just rip off the Band-Aid and move forward. Has much more positive efficiency effects. And on top of that, Andrew and I and our GPs are going to be co-running and being co-founders in a box for our portfolio companies. Each one of those is a company. It is not an understatement to say that some of these companies might become multi-100-person companies, whereas the Actuate umbrella itself really is us. We might add on another 10 people over its lifetime, maybe, right? Unlikely, even. We've seen other venture studios keep it lean. very lean. But none of them ever get past like 100 people. Whereas you build a production company, say, oh, I need to build rockets, right? Or I need to build a space plane or a new widget, right? You could be looking at thousands of employees. We don't know what that looks like necessarily, but we're going to make sure that when we get to those stages, each of those are going to be treated well, independently, right? And each of those challenges are unique. We're not going to be like, here's our startup stack, right? No, it's our attention that we're giving to each of these companies that is the real secret sauce that will allow them to actuate faster. Pun dropped. So yeah, I don't know what else we got.
I think I'm going next with the next part, that is what problems did you face? So it's good to start on a good note. Now, what I faced these past couple weeks actually, for XI specifically, because that's my focus. So everything that I talk about is going to be related to XI. That's my focus right now. So it was going to be it was actually the leads, the not getting enough responses from the warm conversations that I tried to stock. Like for some reason I realized my LinkedIn is going on a beta test or something like that. First of all, I encountered for me to have a search, like let's say I would put co-founder or something like that, it will only give me 3 people and they'll be local to my area, and then all the lists will be blurred out, and it says if you want to add more, if you want to have like a more defined search, or you want to see more options, you need to pay for it. And I was like, what? And I thought, like, okay, I think this is just happening to me. So I showed it to Andrew, and his LinkedIn was completely different than mine. So I was like, okay, they're definitely doing a beta test or something with my LinkedIn. But for some reason I always get choose for everything. Like even Instagram, when they're releasing new stuff, they choose my account to release the new stuff. And I don't know, I'm the chosen one, I guess. So I was like,
They're keeping your ear to the ground with all the new innovations.
I wonder why they don't choose someone like you or like Chris, that you guys are expert on like user experience and stuff like that. Why would they choose me? I have no experience in that. Like, why?
Our
But
perspective is morphed and tainted.
probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's probably random, but you know what? Now I'm thinking that you're right, Nicole. They probably blacklisted us.
It's probably a low impact score.
Yeah, it could be.
We noticed
So-
too much.
Well, no, I think they have. If I was running an experiment like that, I would definitely filter out my users based not randomly, not completely randomly, but like I wouldn't A/B test a high profile individual. Right? So if they go like, okay, this person has less ad spend, they have less
Connections.
connections,
Yeah.
or what if Andrew and I were placed in an A/B and it broke our experience? What impact does that have financially, like as a user experience, as a long-term user experience to a platform? It doesn't have to be LinkedIn or anything, right? Whereas they go like, oh, here's some random account of some 14-year-old, right? Cool. Or who's less likely to drop off if there's a frustration? Because as Andrew knows, I hate most software, where he kind of loves software.
Although my commentary was, if I had gotten stuck in the testing that she was a part of, I'd probably consider leaving the platform.
Well, there you go.
He even messaged. Yeah, he messaged. He was like, you know what? Because you had an option to be like, to send like feedback. He was like, pay for search. Oh my god, having to pay for search, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I was like, that was not me, but it doesn't matter.
Well, it
But
seems
yeah,
like
so
a
I
post we could write about on LinkedIn about LinkedIn.
And tag LinkedIn.
It's like, are you testing paid search?
Yeah, seems like it. So I was dealing with that, and then I also they were testing something else as well, because I was only allowed to send five five notes for my connections. So if I added five people, the first five people would get the 200 character note, and then all the other people will be like, "Oh, you already used all your notes, so you have to wait for next month, or you can upgrade." So I was like, "Damn, what's going on?" Why? Out of all the times that they could test these out, like they chose the week that I was doing outreach. So I was like, damn it. So I had to deal with my frustration on that end. So that was very challenging for me, but I got through it. And I think some of the things are some of the features they come back to normal, because now I can search people and I actually have can see lists and stuff like that. And yes, as of yesterday, I tried sending notes and it didn't tell me you have one left or four left. So I'm just gonna
Cool.
keep trying sending notes. So probably they removed that as well, but I don't know. Um, so we'll see how that goes. And then another thing was like I feel like these I seen Andrew go through these and talk to so many different people. And when you're trying to take a company off the ground, like the first thing you try to lock in your messaging, you what you're offering and all of that, and then it's just hit the ground and try to get your customers right. And I remember one of the meetings that he had, there's this guy that he's an expert at sales, and he basically told him, well, that's what happens when you are, for him, right, for Andrew's context, that's what happens when you are like a smart person, that you had your whole process figured out and everything. You think that there's something else that you can do to elevate it, but there's nothing else you can do at this point. It's just like numbers, just hit the running, the ground running. There's no other option. Like it's just doing the work. There's nothing else you can optimize. And for me, I do feel that there's so many things that I still can optimize on the messaging and stuff like that just come to mind. So what I've done is like whenever something comes to mind, just sit down and add it to my mind map that I'm creating for the whole company. And that's starting to give me some sense of clarity of what other things are out there that I need to focus on, because I cannot segment, oh, today I'll do this and then in 3 months I'll do this. It's like you have to do it all at once somehow, and you have to make it work somehow. And that's the conundrum that I'm finding out, right? Like there's so many things to be done, and you need to make them right, otherwise you're not gonna succeed. So that's another thing that I realized, that I feel like I'm making progress, but at the same time I'm not making progress at all. So one big lesson for me. I feel I feel I'm one of the persons that I'm like, I need to see something tangible to realize I actually made progress. And sometimes it's not going to be like that. Sometimes you cannot have the tangibility right away. It's going to take time. So I need to learn to calm myself down in my OCD and my desperation, to know that it's further down the line, and as if we just continue doing it, I'm gonna get to that point. So that was a big learning for me this week. I don't know. I think next is Nicole.
Yes. So I feel like these are more of like internal struggles with me on like the way that like I work best and how my brain works and how um giving up like control in that way, on being like, oh, everyone, please do this thing for me so I can understand this better, and like trying to balance this on like, is this just a me thing or is it something that like everyone else is feeling too? um and I think like what it's coming down to within myself is like maybe understanding when I need to take initiative on things and guide conversations, especially within like meetings and stuff, versus like just letting it happen. Because I've been feeling like I would come out of meetings being like, oh, I don't know, like the next steps to take, or um or feeling like I would have to go back and be like, oh, maybe I should look back on the fireflies because I missed things. So like kind of setting up a structure for myself so that when I do go into meetings, like I feel like I know what to do next, and like it's not just like to-dos that are sitting there like stagnant that like were just brought up. So then as we're like bringing more people on, like how do we create this structure and start to like systematize a process on, you know, the intentions of meetings, and how like for me, I think Carolina was touching on this as well, on like I kind of need this like tangible thing in front of me, especially right now when we're doing outreach, showing results for things. So then like I could come into these meetings feeling like more empowered on like the direction that I'm thinking. Um, and I'm trying to set that all up, and I don't know if it's working. I guess this is me also for an open floor on like how things are going within our Notion documents. How is everyone feeling about it? Um, so that's where I'm at with my internal things that are going on in my brain.
Yeah, I love that. I've experienced that a lot as well. When it comes to like needing a platform for feedback and like what's the balance of solicitation versus just knowing that if something's wrong, somebody will bring it up to you, or um, something like that. Chris and I chatted about that a little bit, about something completely different. But that could be something that's helpful, right? Is creating the space for that feedback to happen. One thing that I noticed, and I'm going to mention, it didn't go well out of turn a month ago, I think it was. We said it would be a great idea to create a meeting to talk about team dynamics and how everybody likes to work, so that we can have an open dialogue about that and we'll know how to better engage each other. We never did that. So while you were talking, I put an event on the calendar for the week after we get back from Space Symposium, taking action, because if it's not done now, I will forget. That I'll speak about that a little bit later too, but yeah, it's a good call out. But please feel empowered personally to solicit that information. If you feel like you need to know, ask. You know, that's what we're hoping to create here, is that open channel and dialogue, and hopefully it'll get to the point where we figure out how to effectively communicate it or create the spaces for that to happen. So as we scale and we get into our flow, and even if new people come on, and even as new people come on in the future, there's just an open door policy where somebody can pop in and be like, hey, I sent out this thing, but I haven't heard back from anybody. What's up with that? Is everything good? I do need a little bit of feedback. So yeah, let's start playing around with it. Please feel free to solicit it explicitly. And then if we need like a channel dedicated to that, or even just in the groups that we're in, I think it's totally cool to be like, hey guys, I know I asked about this thing, or I haven't asked about this thing. How's it feel? What are the thoughts and that sort of thing? But great call out. I feel that way too sometimes. I'll stare at my screen and be like, no, I'll give it a couple days. But I put these blockers in for myself, and it slows things down. Sorry, that was on Do Not Disturb. And it slows things down unintentionally. So very cool. sorry for hopping on the mic before you, Z. I wanted to ride that wave of topics, but you got a few things.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I was wanting to dial in calls primarily. Was my thinking. That's kind of what came to mind largely by getting in really to action. Like I've been able to pull out action for mine, but I've noticed that possibly for everyone might be missing some sort of action that can come out of them. Then in regards to kind of setting up outbound notes, I think I mentioned that as well. It was kind of in my headspace. But yeah, I had an idea that we kind of, if we distill our three main offerings that we have from XI, I have an idea of kind of a script and a setup that can work very well. I was just on a call with a friend of mine who does sales for various things, and he was talking about he was doing website sales, like web development, and he was like, "Yeah," I give him a call. I'm like, "Hey, you guys like still in business?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, why?" That's just in your site. Couldn't tell. And it like it right away opens the conversation up. So if we can distill our three main offerings, I can probably write up a pretty good script because he was walking me through this process. Um, yeah, and then just timelines wise, like I've been back and forth to so many potential portfolio companies that are doing like really cool things. I'm psyched to be able to actually give them a timeline and dive in deeper because there's questions that I want to ask, but I don't want to lead them down that road for a reason. Yeah, and that's what's like seeing the deals kind of slip simply because they're finishing their raise, they're kind of at the tail end of it, and me being like, okay, let's be in touch. And they're all up for it. They're all like very cool to be in touch because their conversations have always been very, very good. But yeah, that's kind of like what comes up on my end.
Yeah, I always remind myself everything always happens exactly as it should in its right time, especially when we have these awesome opportunities, these awesome companies that we're speaking to, but the timeline just doesn't line up. I think there's a handful of those, Z. It's one thing I wanted to ask. If we can consolidate the things that didn't work out for us for timing, one thing that we want to do in the industry that I think it's pretty common is share awareness of deal flow with other venture partners, other VCs and funds and angels in space. I think there's like 3 or 4 that we had to deliberately say no to just because of timing. I'd like to pass those along. So maybe we should come up with a good place to put those.
Yeah, it'd be excellent. It's really, I mean, it builds our network and then you have that sort of back channeling. It's definitely a very, very good thing.
Dope. I'll go through my few. We're still in the what didn't work well section. So as everybody's kind of alluded to, there's a lot of transitions and fluctuations with focus and with the team. And it's not that it's all over the place. It's more like we are in this sphere. We defined this amorphous sphere, and things started orbiting, and it's a little wobbly to start. But what's starting to happen is things are falling into orbit and finding their rhythm. And in that process, things change, and that's okay. So we're navigating that, and I think we're navigating it pretty well, because we're making it a point to be aware of those things and just taking action upon it, instead of not knowing about them or not reflecting. And then that's when it becomes a detriment. So I think the negative is positive. It's a lot when it's everywhere all at the same time. But it's amazing that as a team, we've come together to kind of embrace that and persevere through it. Like Chris always says, just keep showing up, and things find balance. So that's good. It did feel like we waited a long time on a lot of stuff. So one thing that I'm learning is some things make sense to move 1,000 miles an hour on. Some things also make sense to put in a parking lot to follow up on, and continue moving forward on the other things that need to be moved forward on. And amidst that, I had this interesting balance, just being self-aware over the past week or two. I'd say 2 weeks. I started to trend toward finding busy work, as opposed to some of the more impactful stuff. everything moves the ball forward at this point. So it's really easy to feel like the busy work is productive. But just for example, our deck took way too long to get to the point where it is. Granted, we whipped up a 2-pager that helped facilitate conversations and all of that. But if there would have been focused time on that a little bit every day, it probably would have been done. But it's in a good place now, and moving forward. So just brought to awareness that even though some things might feel productive, it still may be busy work.
And don't, for those building their own organizations, be wary and be mindful of people telling you hard that you're doing things wrong, rather than you might have a better path to an efficiency. Because almost universally, almost every time we've had blatant criticism, it's always been followed up with some sales pitch. It's always someone trying to tell us, oh, some so and so at some major org that has done billion-dollar deals is ripping us apart. You're not going to get X done if you don't do Y done, and it, it comes from their experience. We won't name names, but Andrew knows who I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about. There's a couple people on that list.
Yep, and they're all one person now. No, I mind. But then they go like, okay, no, you need to change your deal size. You need to focus it on these things. You're not having enough of, and there are nuggets of absolute truth in there.
Yeah, for sure.
But the way it's framed in totality is like, hey, I'll help you out. Here are our services. In some way, they loop it back to like their professionalism. And granted, they have their success, and they're going to continue having their success with their model, but within their sphere. And to counter that, we've had a lot of validation from other, in our minds, equally successful individuals.
So much.
Who have then said, oh, wow, that's a really good take on that. Let me know how I can help. You want to listen to the people with keen skepticism on both ends, right? The people who are making a buck, higher level of skepticism, the people giving you praise, they might want something down the line, so there's some skepticism there. And then some people are just reacting positively because they're hearing something novel, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that their past success guarantees your future success. Their past success might have a better play in their world because they're doing. Not everyone is so introspective that they know 100% of their own processes, right? Their own minutia, right? It's like, does the angle of my mouse impact my work, right? Look, maybe it does, but I'm not paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Whereas you go, okay, some people will say, hey, you're not doing enough outreach. Okay, that seems like a completely reasonable statement, right? And they said, hey, here's some interesting low cost or effective tools. That's something to take to heart, right? That's a very productive piece of advice. Whereas if they said, hey, my platform has all of these lists on it, you should join it. And by the way, there's a massive affiliate fee for some of the work that we do. It's like, great, cool. You go on the bottom of the pile.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other aspect of that is it's very much the same with like user research, right? Like any kind of research, any kind of information that's being given from the outside is shared from their worldview, their perspective. It may not fit our mold, but there will always be some sort of learnings. If it's something ridiculous, see past your opinion and ask yourself what you could learn here anyway. There will probably be something, even if it's don't be that person. But even if it seems like they're coming from a good place, it's definitely worth that healthy level of skepticism and analysis and looking at the mass perspective, right? Because if you hear from 10 people, you're probably going to hear 10 different things. There's probably 3 groups of 3 that sound kind of similar. Look for the underarching patterns and then distill what makes sense for you. And along those same lines, to wrap up this last section, we will tighten this up, by the way, in the future. But along the lines of things that didn't work well, my personal productivity and focus feels like it's blurring. I think it's just me going through my orbits and finding my rhythm.
We'll do better to keep you tethered.
Yes, thank you.
See,
I need a dash.
he's. I want to bring this up. Let's see. 11:42 p.m. PST is the last message Andrew sent me.
That's Pacific time.
Pacific, yes, PST.
It's about 3 a.m. for me.
Yeah, nearly 3 a.m. Andrew, what time did you wake up?
8 something.
Okay. So
feeling good.
Yeah,
like
so
I should.
so like 5 hours. My last message to Andrew was 8:55 p.m. PST, and I promptly went to sleep around 10:30. So he is asleep after I am. I'm awake after he is.
And we're 3 hours apart. Yeah.
Yep. Sleep is
was-
productivity.
Yes, it absolutely is. And we are not advertising hustle culture. I will never do that. I believe people should have boundaries. The only reason that I message Chris is I know that he puts his stuff on silent. I've gotten a lot better about not sharing on public channels.
I put him on silent. There's a big difference.
Moving forward. But it's I know that he's protecting his space, so I feel comfortable with that. And we were talking up until that point, but also at the same time, feel empowered. If you got a way that you work well, like do it. Don't burn yourself out. Have balance. Get outside, breathe some air, get some sun, move a bit, get proper sleep. Like it's all really important.
Don't burn your creative stamina.
Yeah.
Right. We have only so much of it, and just like other forms of stamina or exercise, like physical exercise, some people are much more efficient. Right.
Yep.
I've known like sprinters who can't hike as well as I can, and I can't run to save my life. Right. So for them, they don't have the stamina.
Unless it was in the woods.
We all run real fast in the woods when we need to.
Yeah.
I'm just going to run faster than the slowest person. That's all that matters.
Oh, goodness. Zombie apocalypse training 101, everyone.
That you got crocodiles, I got bears, mountain lions. It's fine.
That's very true.
But your creative stamina, your efficiency, find a balance that works for you, but don't conflate work with productivity.
Yes.
So just because you have ideas or things you need to you feel like if you're not executing your there's some things that are more have higher productive creative stamina to them than not. Sometimes sitting down watching TV and doing nothing is better than working on the deck.
Yeah, it's true.
And don't feel bad about it.
Thank you. I know myself well enough to know like when I replenish. So for our listeners out there, know what helps you replenish. Like, don't live in denial either. Like, be honest with yourself. But if you need to step away for a few, like it's very important for your mind to have balance. But last night and this morning, I was in a flow. I was in a fantastic flow. So I rode that out, and that's what worked for me because earlier in the week I had those dips. I had scheduled in those dips to replenish my energy. And that's just when creativity struck. Although I am noticing that I started creating a place that I could dump all the things in my head so I could track them. I haven't been using that. So I need to get a system in place for myself so I can keep track of everything that's going on. So like that's the one thing that's starting to become, I wouldn't say painful yet, but if I don't address it now, it will be painful. And I don't want to deal with that. So I'm preemptively acknowledging that, and we'll put something in place. For instance, the accelerator timeline is slipping. It's taking longer. I'm working with a lot of people, working on curriculum. just having that as something that's on the forefront of my mind with the other 100 things could help prioritize that. So again, just acknowledging that. And then we'll get into the learnings and action items. And again, in the future, we will tighten this up. So it's less of a loose conversation, but hopefully you all are enjoying the new structure as we pass the mic off to Carolina to tell us about learnings and action items that she documented.
Yeah. So for me, action item, it is we're going to try a new approach this week for starting conversations with the help of Z. That he's going to help me craft all the messages and stuff like that, to see what results we get from that, right? And we'll see how that goes. I'm really excited about it. And I think that we're going to have way better results than what I've been doing before, what I've been trying as well. So that's it for the approach, the outreach side of things. Also, another thing is a learning from me. It's gonna take time to get results. Is something that I need to learn. That for some reason is a lesson that I always have to relearn. It seems like whenever you get put something and you don't learn it, you're gonna happen to be upon it again, right? So that's a continuous lesson for me. It's gonna take time. You don't expect for things to happen from one day to the other because they're not. And I think I'm kind of a desperate person in some ways when I'm like I want things done for yesterday if possible. But there's a lot of things that is not even with business, but like with your life that are gonna take time. So it's okay if you don't get the results that you want, as long as you just iterate from that and you just keep trying. And another thing is like just continue showing up. If you keep showing up every day, there's nothing or no one that can beat you, because a lot of the people that are very successful is because they're very disciplined. And you might see their success like it happened, oh, it's from one day to the other, but it's not. It took them time to get to that position, and it was a matter of discipline and keep doing that thing that no one else wanted to do, or even themselves, that they didn't want to do it but they just kept doing it. So that's my mantra for now. We'll see.
Nicole, I see you got a couple things on here as well.
Yes. It tied into what I was talking about before with the problems I was facing. And it's more of like me finding a balance between treating outreach as like this science experiment that has all these different steps, and like it being like this rigid process versus me just letting it happen. I find myself like needing to grasp onto something, and I'm just not feeling that with outreach right now. And it's just a learning thing for me on like letting go of like control of things. And yeah. And then also I want to but since I am feeling this way, it also inspires me to take initiatives on planning things out better for meetings. So like I want to like have all of our documents set up before the meeting so we could just all hop into it, because I have found that we'll create them while we're in the meeting, and I'm like, let's just do it right before, get everyone on it and jot things down, and just like coming up with like a structure so that by the end of the meeting it's like we have like, okay, here's a list of everything that everyone needs to do so we could push this next thing forward. And it sounds so simple, but like for me, that I feel like that's what's going to help. And also once we start bringing, well, we have the people here. I keep saying once we start, I'm like, no, we've grown. Like we've grown now. And I think that it will just help bring out and dish out tasks faster so that we keep going and growing. So that's what's up with me.
Love it. And then Z, you've got a learning and action item here.
Yeah, primarily kind of looking at how to assist Carolina, which I found pretty straightforward. Kind of, looking at people, understanding them at like a very personal level, and then the sales concept I mentioned before. I think it'll help speed things up and also increase outbound success when we reach out to people. And then beyond that, I'm here for anything that's needed that I can jump in on. I'm keeping an eye on it very much so, and where I can or anything I think I can actually be helpful with, I'm popping in for it. And when it comes to the portfolio companies' potentials that I mentioned earlier, it's like Andrew said, things come in their own time, very much so. Just kind of like meant to be, it definitely exists there. So even though I watch things kind of slip, it's like I understand it. It's kind of at the same time, oh, cool. I have to still stay in contact with these people. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward for me. I can when it comes to like problem solution, I can see them in one space in one moment. It's not like, oh, that's a problem. When we think about it, it's like the problem and solution that really just answers to each other. It's a funny way of looking at it. It's hard for me to like break it open and explain it, but it's kind of the way I see them. So yeah.
Cool. Love it. My action item I kind of spoke to with the problems we face, that I need to create a centralized location. So very much in the same sentiment that Nicole was speaking about, like having to have some sort of framework or structure to optimize, to fall into her rhythm. I need to do the same for myself personally. And then on the actuate side, just need to pump up outreach as well. So we started our outreach to LPs and investors. So that's very exciting. We've got messaging honed in. We're getting ready to scale that. Space Symposium is going to be lighter fluid on the bonfire that we've already got going. And then the other outreach that we're interested in are sponsors for the accelerator. So we're having aerospace accelerator coming up. We'll be actively looking for sponsors. So both of those I need to have like a rhythm and schedule time allotted for getting those things out so I can scale it. Because I've started, which is great, and we're refining it and iterating, which is awesome based on the data and feedback we're getting, or lack of feedback that we're getting. But need to be able to scale that. And then same thing, just need once that has a good rhythm going, you need to dive into the deep end for the accelerator, because we would like to start that and launch that and get that running in Q2.
I have a question about the outreach that you are doing for the fund and the accelerator. Are you keeping track somewhere so you're not double reaching or something?
Great question. So we do have a database we've been working from. It was kind of like a dirty list, a semi-dead list of contacts that had agreed to be on a list at some point. Who knows when, because there was a ton of bounce back. So that went from about 1,500 contacts down to 200. And it's now clean. So we're running through that. There we are tracking. For the LinkedIn outreach and the more direct outreach, and what we're going to get going with a couple platforms that we're going to be custom building lists from, we need a method to that. We've acknowledged that. Chris Z and I have talked about it. Probably going to use some sort of CRM or platform to track that, so that we can have that same kind of tracking, so we don't do a double outreach or anything. But right now I have 200 contacts of messages I've sent out in my LinkedIn that are nowhere but my LinkedIn. So we do need to do that. And then even with the outreach, right? Like if Chris and I are both like, hey, we're gonna use LinkedIn, and we both use the same search queries, there's no way to know unless we actively check if that person's already been reached out to. So figuring out a method around that, like Sales Navigator might be something that we have to bite the bullet on, so we could see who we're reaching out to on LinkedIn, all of us, or just having a dedicated platform and more diligence in the process. We're figuring that out. Yeah. So right now, kind of, but we're planning on what that next step is.
Yeah, and that takes us back to the original point where there's 1,001 tools that I know of from my experience, but my experience with marketing automation, sales, lead gen, and these other things. And I know from that experience, unless you're dealing with the volume that other organizations are dealing with, we don't have volume. Like there's 200 people is nothing. That's manageable in Excel, right? It's not great, and we would like better tooling, but there's people who are gonna be like, you needed to have this yesterday. It's like, no, I really didn't. Are any deals slipping through the cracks? I'm actually gonna say no, because we have conversations slip through, but anything that we feel is going to be a deal has not slipped. The random company that has some nut and bolt um, oil lubricant is not a pressing matter in comparison to an LP who reaches out. We had a possible what we thought was an LP reach out, and we got on a call that night, right? That didn't slip through. Whether or not we have effective follow up and we hit like a 48-hour window with a drip campaign, and we do a series of nurture campaigns, and we have our marketing automation list. Look, when you're dealing with the type of fund that we are, and many of the companies that you might be building yourselves, your total market size and the type of volume that you're going to be sending out are not measured in thousands per minute of contacts. It's gonna be like thousands per year, and that's addressable by like a person. So when you feel like, okay, I'm losing productivity, go for it. Add in your CRM, your sales navigator, your whatever connection point you want. But until you actually feel like you need it, don't preemptively set it up, because bigger automation tools are like minimum 10, 15, $60,000 a year, right? You don't why budget for something that Excel will take care of for an okay amount of time.
And we were reluctant to that when we started, right? Like when we first started all this, like 3 or 4 months ago, we set up HubSpot. We're like, we're going to do this process. We didn't. Some did. Shout out to Nicole and Chris and Carolina and everybody but me.
It wasn't worth it.
It
like I knew it wasn't worth it, but it also didn't eat up my time in a tangible way. But it was proof. Like, yep, cool. We understood the market.
We tried it. We moved past
it. Experiment, and we moved past it. That's it.
But now we're at a point where it makes sense to give a little bit more structure. It makes sense to have a little bit more of a process, because we have 4 people doing outreach to the same type of people. How do we mitigate the risk of dual outreach, as opposed to how do we create a rigid structured process and automate everything and make sure that we're whatever, like it'll evolve into that, right? But like, what are the important parts of structure that we need to get in place, and how do we support that with any software? And then even more so drilling down, how do we use what we already have? That's been a great learning, and it's something I think we're getting pretty good at. So it's nice to see.
And just to say one more time for the folks listening, like our list that we have that we're reaching out to is 400 people. That is the culmination of this filtered list that we have. That is nothing in the marketing world, right? But that's how targeted we are and how niche our space is. We're managing it. We're not like, oh, you don't have everything in place. Look, if you can't manage 400 contacts, we have more of that on our LinkedIn.
Yeah, I hate Excel. I hate using Excel because I'm uncomfortable in it. And it doesn't make sense for my brain, the way that my brain works. But our list is in Excel. We set up a system that we're using because all the data is there. And again, if you need to get something done, just ask yourself what the simplest way to do it is. And just start doing it and iterate in a way that it makes sense for you. Did you have any learnings or action items that you wanted to speak to, Chris, or do you want to wrap it up?
I think we're good to wrap it up. We have plenty of exciting things. I suspect this podcast will come out after Space Symposium, but if it doesn't, see us at Space Symposium. Andrew and I will be there basically all week. We're actually flying in on the day before to a lovely Airbnb, only a couple of minutes drive away. So we actually have it even closer than most people who are staying in the area, surprisingly. And yeah, it's gonna be Disneyland for space companies, as I've been told. So we're gonna have the run of the place. And Andrew, would you want to announce anything in terms of Space Symposium?
Give me a hint. Yeah, no, come on, give me a hint. Need a hint.
Does it involve Space Foundation?
Oh, yeah. So we lightly mentioned it earlier in conversation. Sorry, it's been so normal for us because this has been in the works for a while. But a couple of weeks ago, we officialized our partnership with Space Foundation. Space Foundation is the creator and facilitator of Space Symposium and many other initiatives. So we're formally partnering with them and their Space Commerce Institute team. We will be joining forces on our upcoming aerospace accelerator. Accelerators in the future created for specific institutions, companies, and or sovereign nations. So we've got a lot of really exciting things to come down the line. And then another consideration of our partnership is collaborating on any kind of consultation. So if there is resources or context or perspective that is needed from around or about the space industry, Space Foundation has our back and will be bringing the full breadth of their expertise, and really, really looking forward to how the relationship is going to kick off and evolve. So yes, very exciting.
I was gonna say this is my stand-up comedy bit for the podcast. I was gonna say it rhymes with blartnership because you needed a hint before.
I probably would have got that too.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. So thank you for everyone that tuned in. Again, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are.
Absolutely. Cheers, y'all.